Does it feel good that Jamari gets his degree?
Yeah, I think he finishes up this week, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know when it becomes official. I guess grades have to get in, but yeah, to think that, he came in a situation where the NCAA obviously didn't let him play because of a rule, and basically to see him, stay after it and finish up, and I think it speaks volumes of his character and his want to. He's a terrific kid. Or a young man.
You said in the past that he could be one of the great success stories to come through here. Could you just talk about where he's come from in Chicago and now, and how much he's grown?
Well, there's a lot of success stories, but the ones that you probably hold truest to your heart are the ones that the deck is stacked against him a little bit, and this deck was stacked against him. The first time that we saw Jamari was by accident. We go down to IMG to look at somebody else, and Curtis says, "Hey, check him out. He looks pretty athletic." But he wasn't a highly recruited kid by any means. I mean, Texas Tech messed with him for a bit, and there was a few other schools, but he really didn't have much of a resume because he really didn't play in high school. I think he played one semester maybe or 1 year in high school because he was never really eligible because of his home situations with him being homeless for a while. So certainly that put him behind the eight ball. But to see how he just kind of fought through it, he went down there and did everything he was asked to do to get eligible, and come to find out what he was asked to do did not meet NCAA qualifications. Not because he got bad information. I just think the person that helped him had no idea that everything he did wouldn't count because they couldn't give him those extra 2 semesters because he was homeless for a year. And I think everybody assumed that would probably be the case. So we lost the appeal for him to be eligible, and he and Ben hung in there. And he's been great since. He's not the most skilled player that we've ever had. And certainly not the biggest. He's kind of at an in-between size, 6'7", and having to play against big guys. But he always gives us great effort, and he's very, very bright, and he understands how to play, and other guys really enjoy playing with him. So he makes the game easier for others.
His role has sort of changed over the years. How do you see it sort of kind of finishing out this year?
I don't know. I mean, one, he has to be a great leader to our younger guys, without question. He's a better player than he was 2 years ago, but we also have more players in our program than we did a couple of years ago when he was playing quite a bit of minutes off the bench. So, I think it still remains to be seen on a couple of the guys on what their role will be as the season moves forward. But certainly he's been a great leader and a great mentor to those young kids. He pulls for them as hard as anybody does.
A couple of games ago, you talked about giving Hunter a chance. I guess from film, what have you seen from him after giving him, extended minutes the last couple of games?
I think he's done some good things. The first game, I don't even think he scored. In the second game, he makes a couple of jumpers, and which was nice, but still a couple of jumpers doesn't give us an inside presence. It's great that you have 5 guys that can all make jump shots, but we need to have one guy that can make a basket in tight and that you can throw it to and get fouled too. So even though he's done some nice things, there's still some other things that he could do that could probably best benefit the team. But I like Hunter. I think he's done a nice job. I think he's played well. But a lot of times when you have he and Perry in there together, the way you would think in theory Hunter can shoot it well enough to get a defender off Perry in the post, but Perry really hasn't played in the post much at all. And we've got to get Perry. Hunter will be more effective if Perry starts posting more. But when we play to just jump shots, I almost feel like we have to do something to try to get a big guy in there to play with his back to the basket. So.
What's Montana bring to town?
Well, they've been a little bit inconsistent. Kind of like us. They've obviously had the last shot against Gonzaga at Gonzaga to send it to overtime, and had the lead with a minute left. And then Gonzaga had a player, a freshman, make a couple of plays to actually give them the lead back. But very good, experienced inside. Got a guy that can certainly score on the block and plays well beyond his standing height. And then they got some quick guys on the perimeter, and based on what I've been told, I don't know this to be a fact, but Norm told me this morning they've got a guy that could become eligible for our game that we haven't seen yet. So we'll try to we'll get Chris to dig that out and try to find that out. But it was a guy that was a starter for him last year. So this will probably be the most whole they've been, if that's the case, since their season started.
You talked about trying to find a complement for Perry. Are you still trying to kind of figure out the options with that?
Well, I know the options. There's 5 of them.
Yeah, but I mean,
So,
I guess the best fit for that.
well, a lot depends on Perry. I mean, if we need him to play bigger. And I'm not being negative, but the whole thing is that Perry's strength in a lot of ways is moving away from the basket. Well, you move him away from the basket and you put somebody in there that's not good at playing close to the basket. That doesn't bode well for our team. So we have to get somebody that can score in tight, or get Perry to where he's scoring in tight again. I think it varies day to day based on how they're playing and based on scout and report and who you're playing against and what the other team's strengths are and a lot of different things. No question, Landon, going back a few games ago, nobody could guard the big kid from Harvard like Landon could. Nobody. You go back and, but there's a lot of, Landon's not the best at guarding a pick and pop guy. And then you could go into, we have other guys that can probably do that better. So I think everybody's about the same. And so Carlton and Sheck, to me, have the most upside of anybody in our program from a big man perspective. But we also need to win games now. And so although we want to develop them, and I still think there'll be great options moving forward, I'd like to see a little bit more consistency out of those guys too. But everybody's doing fine. It's just nobody's separated themselves from the others.
Is that what's made this different a little bit too? That you have a bunch of bigs that all kind of do different things but aren't necessarily interchangeable with each other?
I don't know that I buy the interchangeable part. I think there's some that play better with others. I think if you were going to ask any of our players on the team who's the easiest guy to play with of all our bigs, everyone would say Jamari. Everybody, Frank, Devontae, Wayne, they'd probably say Jamari. So if that's the case, then you want to try to do what's best for your team over time, and certainly there's times where he gives us the best chance, but it's not consistent. I mean, there's times where others do as well. So we're still trying to figure it out. I think we will figure it out sooner rather than later, but it's not a terrible problem to have. It would be a bad problem if it's middle of February and you're still experimenting, but I don't think that this is a terrible problem to have right now.
Is Bragg a good passer?
Yeah, Carlton's a good passer. Carlton has good feel to pass the ball. If there's a high-low, he's going to throw it regardless if it's remotely open or not. I think he's proven that. But I do think he has good vision, and I do think he has good feel. So he'll be he and Jamari. And Landon's not a bad passer, but he and Jamari are probably our 2 best passing bigs.
Second half of the game the other night against Oregon State, as you know, you played the 5 and then substituted 1. Where do you kind of arrive at that? Do you arrive at that at halftime and say,
No.
This is the 5 that can do it?
No, I didn't do that at all. We went in the second half thinking we were going to play everybody, but the guys were playing so well, I didn't see any reason to sub. And you got to win the game. When you're down 11 at halftime, you don't go into the second half thinking, oh, we got this game in the bag. That was not the thought at all. We want to win the game. So guys are playing well, and you get it tied, and then guys keep playing better, and you get up 5, and guys keep playing better, and you get up 10, and I didn't want to break the momentum we had, and I didn't feel like the first half that the bench, nor the starters, but primarily the bench, did anything to allow us to maintain any little bit of momentum that we had. So I just decided not to. And when guys aren't tired, bench is great, and depth is great for foul problems and injuries, and certainly when guys become fatigued. But if none of those three conditions exist, play your better guys, and that's what we did the second half.
You guys are doing a little bit different on defense this year. It seems like your guards are being pretty disruptive, but your teams are still shooting a pretty high percentage against you so far. Where do you see some of the breakdowns, or how do you get that number down?
Well, the number's at 40.9%, which is a little misleading, and our number will go down. It always does, but a lot of teams' numbers are lower early because of competition, and a lot of teams' numbers are higher early because of still figuring it out. And I still think that we're a higher number because we're figuring it out. But this is not a lockdown defensive team yet at all. And I think every coach and every player would admit it. We don't. When you score the ball a little bit easier, sometimes your defense suffers, and that's the way it's been on every team that we've ever had. And I think you could ask the coaches around the country, everybody would agree with that. When you know that you labor to score, or you're not a percentage shooting team, then you really hunker down and do certain things because you know you have to win. And our guys in the back of their mind, they're thinking, we're going to score enough points to win. Which so far, for the most part, has been true, but it's not the right mentality, and we've got to change our mentality. And that, we've been talking and working on it, trying to get if a team gets another good look, that's bad defense, regardless if the ball goes in or not. And we're better defensively than our stats, but still yet we're not near the defensive team that you have to be in order to compete at the highest level, in my opinion. But we're working on it. A lot of it has to do with our bigs. Be real candid with you. We've got to figure out a way to put up a little bit more resistance inside and have better shot blockers. You think about it. You look at some of the weird stats. Devontae and Frank have 38 steals combined. The rest of the team in 550 minutes, and the rest of the team in 1,250 minutes have 36 steals combined. You look at block shots. Although we're blocking a decent number, you take Hunter and Sheck out of there. There's nobody blocking these shots. I think our third leading shot blocker is a guard. So there's a lot of things that guys can do to become more active and create more havoc defensively. And not that you have to be a great shot blocking team or whatever, but if you're not a shot blocking team, then you should at least be an activity team. And we got some big guys that are really not doing either one. So that's where we got to get better.
Bill, when you were recruiting Wayne, I guess out of high school, was he thought of as a really good shooter, or was he really developed into a really good shooter?
I think he's thought of as a really good player. I don't think anybody ever labeled him as a terrific, 3-point shooter. I know that I didn't. I thought he was a guy that could do a little bit of everything. But he has shot the ball at a ridiculously high level so far, and we hope that continues. But the reality is, percentages do balance out over time, but he's off to as good a start shooting the basketball as probably anybody in the country, and it's fun to watch. But to me, it's not forcing it. He's not. There's been times in the first 2 years, I think, when things weren't going well, the way he made up for it was to go do something that was maybe a low percentage play to get confidence back, and that's not the smart thing to do. It'd be like being in a baseball slump, but on the first pitch, you got to hit a low outside pitch and hit it hard. I mean, so that probably wouldn't be. You got to pick your spots a little bit, and I don't think he picked his spots as well in his first couple of years. This year, I think he's playing well when he ball. I mean, I could look at him and say, you haven't made shots, but you still played very well, because I think he's become more of a complete player.
You touched on this, Bill, but what more do you need from Perry?
Just activity. Yeah, I mean, going after the ball. I thought he rebounded the ball great second half the other day. But let's just, this isn't being negative, and this isn't putting any pressure on anybody, because it's factual. You're not putting pressure on somebody if you tell somebody they think they're good. I think Perry Ellis is capable of playing to an All-American type level. I think he is. And so, what does an All-American type level play to? Well, he can't do it at his size unless he's ultra aggressive. I mean, there's been times last year during a 3-week stretch where I thought he was a first-team All-American playing to that level. It wasn't because he's making all his shots, it's because everything he did was aggressive. He's driving straight lines. He wasn't driving side to side. He's so good at driving a straight line and then counter off the defense's reaction, as opposed to now he's not really driving it hard, so there's no counter to be made. I mean, I think that he is a guy that can play at such a high level, and that's what excites me about our team. Is we've done okay. We haven't been great, but we've done okay. But I still don't think we've seen the best of what we can do, because he's so important to our team, because he is the one guy that can make something out of nothing when you throw it to him, and all good teams have that, and I think that he'll get that. He just been in a little bit of a funk the last couple of weeks, but he's more than capable of playing at an All-American type level, and if that's too much pressure, then that's too much pressure, because that's why he came back to school. So to downplay that we don't want him to be that, I don't think is speaking truthfully at all, because we want him to be that. We need him to be that.
Do you schedule games still to help recruiting, like the West Coast?
Yeah, we have.
Will that help going out there?
To play San Diego State? I guess it could if there's guys in the area that we're recruiting. And usually when you recruit, with us, we don't recruit geographically like a lot of schools do. Like a lot of schools live in the West Coast, so you play on the West Coast, which guarantees you help. And we more or less pick and choose. So there's some years, when the schedule was made, this game was probably scheduled 5 years ago. So you stop and think about it. You had the return game, which we didn't play last year, so the return game is this year. So it's probably scheduled 4 or 5 years ago, and back then those kids were all in 8th grade, so we don't know who we're recruiting then. So, but I do hope it helps us, but I can't say that in this particular case that it will help us recruiting at all.
Is that still a hotbed area?
San Diego?
No, LA.
Oh God, yeah. Yeah, there's wherever there's a lot of people living. There's a chance that there's more players in those particular areas. So, you still think about, historically over time, L.A., Chicago, even New York, Philadelphia, Dallas, Houston. I mean, these highly populated areas have always produced players, and of course, L.A.'s produced as many as any city probably in America over the last 30 years, and you think about the success that Kansas has had recruiting that area, because that was one thing that Roy did. Roy made an emphasis on recruiting the West Coast, and we haven't done that near as much as what the previous staff did, and they were great at it.
Thanks, Coach.
All right, guys.